Okay, you guys, thank you so much for coming to hear my talk. I do advise the little ones maybe not stay. I just have a little bit of a potty mouth. It's nothing bad, I just have a little bit of a potty mouth, so I'm just letting you know ahead of time. Just to give you a little bit of background about me before I start, for those of you that don't know who I am a photographer. I specialize in documentary family photography. I travel all around the world, spending anywhere between 24 and 72 hours with a family just documenting their life. And I really loved it, and I really loved speaking and teaching about photography. But I've learned a lot from spending all this time with families, and so working with all my students and seeing that there's common struggles we all have when it comes to failure, I thought it would be a perfect topic to talk about for this talk, and to do it free for as many people that it can help as possible. And okay. So this was a really monumental date for me in my life. It was 7 years ago. I had a long-term boyfriend. I was in my late 30s, and we had been together for over 4 years, and I was sure that we were going to get married, and I was going to have babies, because all my friends pretty much were already married and doing that. And that alone can feel like a failure when you're not married or having babies at that age. There's a lot of pressure. And so March 14th, it was the end of a weekend where we were living and working in the Outer Banks in the summer. And my boyfriend at the time had a gig there. We were living in Virginia about 3 hours away in the winter. And I just had a funny feeling that something wasn't right. And he wasn't really good at lying about stuff. And long story short, I realized he was having an affair. And I confronted him about it in the car right before our 3-hour drive back home. And he admitted that he was having an affair. So for the next 3 hours, we hashed it out in the car with no escape plan. I got home, I packed a bag, and I took the dog, and I said, "I'm leaving, you have a week to get out of here." And I drove away. And in my rearview mirror, I saw him running, like, after my car. And apparently I've watched way too many chick flicks, because in my mind, this was going to be the moment. He was going to be crying, he was going to be devastated, he was going to be so distraught that I had discovered this affair he was having, and he, like, runs. I slam on the brakes. It was a dirt road, so, very dramatically the dust flew, and I saw him running to the car, and I had to roll down my window because I had a really old car. And so I rolled it down, and I was like, "Yes." And he was like, "Do you know where my cast iron skillet is?" And I said, "If you don't get out of the way, I'm going to run you over with my vehicle." And I never went back. I went back to the house after he left, and I ended that relationship immediately. Okay. It's interesting because I felt like that was one of the biggest life failures I had had. In that moment in the car, I felt like everything that I knew about the plan and the direction of my life was done. And I had no idea where to go. I was really depressed. I spent many hours for many weeks crying in the shower. Now, looking back on that, 7 years later, I cannot be more grateful for that relationship failing, because I'm kind of a stick-with-it type of gal, and I would have stuck with that relationship the entire time. I would have married him. I would have convinced him to have children with me, and it probably would have ended up failing anyways, because in the end, we weren't right for each other. And I look back now, and I see I'm much happier with the right person, and he is as well. But what took me from feeling devastated and defeated with a relationship that had ended to where I am now, feeling completely grateful for that failing. And it took 7 years and a lot of work, introspective work. So I waited about 2 years to start dating again. I really worked on me because I had to recognize that him having the affair wasn't all his fault, right? I had some sort of responsibility or part in our relationship failing, which would lead to him moving on to something else for him. And so I spent a lot of time with a couple therapists and a lot of time just working on me and recognizing and acknowledging what it was that I really wanted in my life and what would make me happy. And I started working on my photography a lot. I also decided that it was time to start online dating. Now, why would I share this? Because this getting to a place where I was ready to date again and deciding to online date, because I don't really know where else at that point to meet people. I didn't want to like meet someone in a bar, so I figured I'd just window shop online. This was huge for me in terms of my career, and I'll explain why. First of all, is there anyone out here that has online dated at some point in their life? How many people enjoyed the online dating? I see 2 hands out of 20. For those that have online dated, this will be very humorous and yet relatable with the following things that I will share. So, it was not the best experience, and it was not a successful experience for me. In fact, I failed miserably at online dating. But it wasn't only my fault. It was also the gentleman that I was trying to court. But during that time that I was online dating, I was getting ready to go to WPPI, which is this wedding photography conference or whatever. And they were doing this series of talks at the conference. You got 5 minutes. It's called an Ignite talk. And so you only get 5 minutes. You get 20 slides. And they move on a time. So you have no control over it. I can't control it, right? And my friend was like, you should totally do it. And I was like, what? I'd never done any speaking for photography or anything before. And I was like, I do not, no one wants to hear me speak. And she's like, you can talk about anything, just relate it to photography in some way. I was like, okay, I'll sign up. And so I decided I would write a 5-minute talk on the rules that gentlemen should follow when showing their profile photos on an online dating website. Yes? I have been. Okay. Maybe I haven't been. Okay. For those of you that might be single and deciding that you might like to online date, please follow these rules. I am hitting the right button, you guys. The arrow to the right. Okay. Unless it's Fido, please keep the animals in their cages. Let's look at an example. This guy. This guy. That was his profile photo, folks. And he reached out to me thinking I might be interested. Making out with your pet rat doesn't make me want to make out with you. The most amazing thing is somehow I found 2 guys with pet rats. Okay, second rule. Don't make me think you want to kill me. Or that photo is no longer there. Okay. Both those photos are gone. Save your Photoshop projects for class. Why are all these missing? This is really sad because this is really funny. I think he's going to check it. We're going to hold on one second. I'm so super glad that this is live streaming right now, by the way, folks. I cannot oversee the karma of this being a talk about failure. Just throwing that out there. How are we doing in the booth up there, folks? Usually I look at you, Jess, to help. Oh, here we go. So let's go back to the people that want to kill me, just for a second. Okay. How about these guys? I'm not quite sure why they think this is the best choice for their profile photo as their first introduction to me. Or these guys. How about that guy with his black eye on the left? There was another photo I used to use from another guy that reached out to me, and I couldn't find it for this talk, but my husband was looking over my shoulder, and he's like, dude, that's totally my friend. Okay, save your Photoshop projects for class. There we go. Y'all, I just want you to appreciate the guy on the far left who has a photo that he has made of his squirrels that are sword fighting. Look at them. While I appreciate the creativity, I still don't think he'd be the first choice I would make going out with someone. Okay. Phone a friend if you aren't sure if the picture is representing your best self. How about these guys? I'm sure they're all really nice, but for a young single woman, this isn't the best first impression to make. Okay. If you're in fact a man seeking a woman, please don't make me consider setting you up with my gay boyfriend. These guys. I am not lying. Hey, the people that have online dated, am I lying or is this true? Like, did you see this kind of stuff in the profile photos? Okay, and here's the most important one. Keep your fucking clothes on. How about these guys? I just have one question. Oh my God, hide the kids' eyes. Hide their eyes right now. I'm so sorry, I forgot there's a little bit of nudity. I just have one question, and that is, I'm wondering who took that photo for this guy. Okay. Now here's the interesting thing. I did this talk, and then I was not prepared for 2,000 people watching it in the audience. But it went really well, and all of a sudden, I decided never to internet date again. And I started being invited to speak at conferences. And it was really amazing because people started recognizing me, and I started getting more work, and I could travel more, and that was awesome. I really liked that. But I realized, because of doing just funny talks, that no one was really taking me seriously as a photographer, and that was kind of a bummer. So I decided to focus a little bit more on my photography moving forward and integrating that into my talks. And while I did that, my photos got better and better. So now, these are some of the photos that I make, even though this isn't technically a photography class. It is a talk about life and relationships and how we interact with one another. And I can't impress upon you more the beauty between children and their parents and their relationships. I get to see them at their most vulnerable states. I get to see them reveal who they really are. I get to see them feel all their feelings, because it's something that kids are really good at. I get to witness and document parents multitasking and working really hard doing the jobs that they do. I get to show parents the connection they've made with their children, the way that they've imprinted on them. I get to remind them that they are loved. I also get to remind them that sometimes being a parent is a dirty job. I also get to show them how beautiful their imperfect life is. I love this phrase, this saying. Grown-ups never understand anything by themselves, and it is tiresome for children to be always and forever explaining things to them. It's from The Little Prince. And I feel that way when I work with kids, that they're always reminding me what's most important about life. So my background is, I actually have a child psych degree and a concentration in learning and development. I ended up being a kindergarten and first grade teacher for a few years before I moved into this. I never thought in a million years my background would actually be of huge benefit to me in terms of my photography. But researchers now agree that personality is developed, it starts to develop in the womb. And I have no doubt about that because I experienced it firsthand. My daughter never stopped moving the entire time she was inside me, and I just kept thinking, I'm fucked, I'm so fucked. And she does not ever stop talking or moving or running or feeling all her feelings now. This is a fascinating fact to me. By 7, your core personality is completely finished developing. Now, in terms of your environment and your experiences, that will influence how you respond to the environment. But the core personality, your core personality, is completely defined by age 7. So, what I've realized from photographing kids is that they thrive on failure. That's how they learn everything that they learn. They have to fail in order to try and do it again until they succeed. I see it when I photograph all the time. They will, and if you have kids, you will probably agree with me. If you photograph kids, you will agree with me. Kids repeat their behavior over and over again if they're failing until they succeed. If they're succeeding at it, they just keep doing it over and over again until they get hurt or they get in trouble or they're told to stop. I'll show you an example. Okay, the other thing that I love is when I'm photographing kids, I want them to know I'm on their side and I'm not there to tell on them. And if I see kids doing something naughty, I don't ever tell the parents. I wait for them to see the photos later. And so this is a little story about this kid who looked at me when we were upstairs in his bedroom. He's like, I think my teddy needs a bath. And he had never given his teddy a bath before. So he just put him in the sink and he washed him. And he decided that he needed to do it again. And he did it about 4 times. Once they felt that the bear was totally washed, which was about 4 or 5 times, and the entire bathroom was soaking wet, they decided to put him to bed. And then we left for the day. And I didn't say anything. And it's funny because kids will test you when you're photographing them to see if and what they can get away with. So they'll be like this. And I'll just be like, and once I give them that verbal cue, that physical cue, it's no holds barred. I've got kids throwing themselves into beds and pushing each other down on the floor and washing their teddy bears, and then we leave them for the day. So night came, we went back, and I still didn't say anything to the parents, and they put the kids to bed. And so the lights were off, and once the lights are totally off, I have nothing to photograph because I have no light, and so I leave the room. And I just hear Dad go, "Why the hell is your teddy bear soaking wet?" And all I thought was, you'll see in the pictures when you get them. Okay. Here's the thing, children are born without fear. It's not instilled in them. Small children, they are fearless. They test their boundaries physically, they test their boundaries emotionally, they test their parents. And somehow we lose that along the way. Here's some examples of some fearless children. Here's my rule. I will not intervene unless it looks like they're going to kill themselves, each other, or their family pet. Otherwise, I'm going to let them do what they're going to do. This is one of my all-time favorite photos. They just really are fearless until they realize they're stuck, and then they want help. Children are naughty, and they have no fear of getting caught. So, this taught me something. Working with these kids, I realized that I can't live with fear of failure, of fear of disappointing myself or others. And so I finally made the choice to get involved with a long-term relationship again. And it was really hard for me because I was super afraid of getting hurt again. At that point, I'm almost 40, and I had given up the idea of having kids because I didn't want to end up in a relationship simply because I wanted to procreate, right? So I just made the decision in my heart, I'm not going to have kids, and when I meet the right person, it'll be to have a life partner to travel the world and have all these amazing experiences with. So this is Greg, and we've known each other since 2001. I totally thought he was gay when I met him. I definitely wouldn't have dated him in 2001. But I'm going to tell you a funny story also about fate. It's interesting because his mom's in the audience. Gay keeps coming up a lot. That wasn't my plan in this talk, but so I think it was like 2010, maybe. I lived in Richmond, Virginia. Anybody out there that lives in Richmond, or if you've ever been to Richmond, one of the coolest things to do in Richmond is go to drag brunch. I mean, it is full-on professional drag queens on a Sunday, packing a house with all these beautiful costumes, singing their hearts out, and we're just drinking lots of Bloody Marys and mimosas and eating great food, right? So I go with this group of friends that I go with every year, and I end up sitting next to this couple, and we talk the whole time. And somehow the conversation comes up that I'm a photographer. She's like, oh my God, my son's a photographer too. And then it comes up that I used to work at a comedy club, and her son worked at tobacco company next door to the comedy club. And I was like, whoa, I know a lot of people that worked at tobacco company. Who is your son? And she's like, oh, Greg Bethman. I was like, I love your son. He's great. I haven't seen him in forever. And we part. I think I have a photo. Joan and I have a photo of us with the drag queens somewhere. So fast forward like 3 or 4 years later, Greg and I run into each other at a dinner party. We haven't seen each other in a long time. I'm now sure he's not gay, and we get along really well. It was like we were first meeting again, even though we'd known each other for a long time. We hadn't seen each other for a while. And so we started dating, and it was very casual. I didn't want to get involved in a serious relationship. I was moving here to Denver, and he's like, I'm going to tell my folks I'm dating someone. And so he does, and he's like, Mom, I'm in a new relationship, and I'm actually dating someone that you've met before. And she goes, oh, please let it be that girl from Drag Bunch. And it was. So, this is not your ordinary proposal story. But Greg and I have been dating, and I knew that I wanted to spend my life with him. And so I'm also very impatient, and I couldn't wait any longer. So I decided I might fail, but I'm just going to ask him to marry me at some point. So on a whim, I had a couple of glasses of wine. We're at an art gallery, and there's this installation with this typewriter. And it just says, type a loved one a letter. And I was like, I'm just going to ask Greg to marry me in a typed letter, and I'm going to mail it to him. And my friend Katie, who's also had a show, an exhibit or an installation at the show, I'm sitting down, she's like, what are you doing? And I was like, I think I'm going to ask Greg to marry me. And she's like, Kirsten, that's being projected in the other room for like everybody else to read. And my husband really hates attention on himself. But Katie and the person who had created this installation go and get Greg. And so, I mean, I'm writing this really nice letter, really long. I have waited my whole life to meet someone that makes me feel the way that you do. The way. W-E-Y. Breathe with 2 E's. Maybe I did have like 3 glasses of wine. I dream more vividly. What the hell? I long more lovingly. Okay. Maybe I drank a bottle of wine. This is not how I imagined it would go, but I feel like it's right and perfect right now. So, like when we were kids, passing notes back and forth, yes or no, please write back, forever yours, Kirsten. And he's, I'm pretty sure, mortified in the other room, and everyone's taking pictures of him and clapping and running over to see what he's going to say. So I'm at the typewriter, and I just feel a knocking on my shoulder, and I was like, yes. And he was like, well, get up, I have to respond. And this was his response. Well, duh, yes. A man of few words. Okay, so here's another lesson I've learned from children. This is actually my daughter. And yes, she's not wearing a seatbelt, but we're in Buenos Aires. So when in Buenos Aires, do as they do. Children are unapologetically themselves. And this is something that we as adults aren't, or most of us are not. We're so afraid of what everyone else is going to think about the decisions we make with our families, with our businesses, with our love lives, that we lose this. And this is a really beautiful thing about childhood. It's one of the things I love most about photographing it, is because I get to witness it on a daily basis and be reminded that actually being your earnest self is going to provide the most happiness. Sometimes they're weird and funny. Let's go back to that photo for a minute. I literally walked out of the house, no one was up yet, and I just came upon the scene of a naked kid swimming on a giant inflatable hot dog. Kids do weird shit, and I love it. They're unapologetically themselves. Like I said, they feel all their feelings, and they're not afraid to feel all their feelings, right? This is one of my favorite people in the whole world. His name is Kirsten, and I'm doing a long-term project on him. He's constantly reminding me to be proud of myself and to be confident in myself. You can even see it in mom, right? Like, look at mom versus look at her daughter. She's also thinking my husband's gonna fucking kill me. I'm letting my 11-year-old daughter drive the car. I don't think a lot needs to be said about this photo. I do love these kinds of photos that I make because it says something about the type of parent this is. This is definitely a third child, not a first child. I love that, like, he's totally soaking wet in the mud, drinking out of the faucet, mouth, total contact. Who knows what's been attached to that? But it brings him much joy. Just take this one in for a minute, folks. There is a perfectly good porta potty right there. So as adults, we become very self-critical, insecure, and we doubt ourselves. I've really been trying to identify why this happens. Why is it that we go from being so confident, so unaware of what other people are thinking about us, to this? This is me, myself. Like, I am self-critical. I am insecure. I doubt myself. And it really makes me sad. So, for the last few years, I've been trying to do research. This came out in 2015. And they were really proud of themselves that this was a plus-size model. If this is what society is telling us is plus size, when it's really just smaller than average, this is what's driving insecurity with us, especially women. And when I'm mentoring women, I find the hardest thing to do is to inject some confidence in them. Confidence in their work, confidence in them telling themselves they're good photographers, they're good people, they're good mothers. It's really disheartening. But it's not only women, it is men too. But I have the hardest time trying to gift women confidence. It's something that I can't do. And I think that media plays a huge part in that. These days, we're told that happiness really doesn't include really cool water slides. This is definitely me. I'm always going to where things are fun and new and exciting. And it's something I really want to impress upon my daughter as she grows up. But I'm worried that all of this, all of what society tells you is happiness, is going to interfere with that as she gets older. Because this is what I'm seeing happening. Children going from being super confident and happy all the time, feeling good about who they are, expressing themselves however they may, to being closed and concerned about letting themselves out there. I love this meme. Social media, it's good for a lot of things, right? For me, I'm able to teach through social media so that people around the world can experience learning opportunities that they might not have where they live. But it also creates this false sense of security. And I've even found it happen with myself too. With Facebook especially, we can be whoever we want to be to whoever we want to that we've friended on Facebook. We can create this really false persona because we're so afraid of being who we are, genuinely who we are. So we can make ourselves look perfect. Whatever life we want people to think we have, that's what we present. If anybody follows me, they know that I just admit every screw up that I make because I want people to know who I am, the real me. It also reminds me that I'm okay the way that I am. Our self-confidence just diminishes as we get older. The lovely thing is then there's like this curve. I do feel like in my 40s now, I'm kind of like, I give less fucks every day. But those really important years between like 18 and 40 or 50, those are really hard years if we aren't confident in who we are. And it prevents us from accomplishments that could have easily been had. It's getting better, but for a long time, there were a lot of generations that really encouraged men to suppress their feelings. I will tell you, I've seen a new trend, and I love it, that when I go into families' homes, whether it's girls or boys, they all have their nails painted because having colored nails is really fun, right? And I am noticing that there is less of this going on. But there was a very long time where men were told to be men, to be boys, we don't cry, right? This plays a huge part on confidence as you get older. It teaches you not to feel all the feelings that you do when you're a kid. Society also teaches women to be submissive, to grow up to be submissive women. And this is where I'm finding the link between self-confidence with my female students in particular. Them feeling good about saying, I make good work and I'm worth this much money. They just have a really hard time with that. And I think it's not just in photography, I think it's any industry. I just find that this very long amount of time and history of teaching men and women what their roles were was very detrimental to the coming generations. I'm finding that we're so wrapped up in the unimportant details, expectations, and comparisons that we forget the why. Why do we live? Why do we breathe? It should be for happiness, not everything on your to-do list. This is pretty much what my desk looks like from all my assistants because I'm really bad at keeping track of everything I have to do. But this like haunts me, and I don't want this to happen anymore. It haunts me, everything that I have to do on my list. I am a perfectionist, but I'm learning to embrace that I am the least perfect person on the planet. I fail all the time, and that's okay, because that makes me a stronger person. That makes me a smarter person. That makes me a more talented person. All of my failures are teaching me to work harder. Kids have taught me to focus on the why. They live in the present, and it's something that we all need to work harder at, just living in the present, and me included. Oh no. Okay. Well, I'm just going to read this to you. So, once I got pregnant, I got added to a bunch of mom groups on Facebook, and I quickly learned that I'm not really the typical person that should be added to the mom group because I'm very opinionated. And doing all this research, I want people to realize the why and not focus on these unimportant details. So this woman posted this in this group. I'll read it to you. Help! I'm so upset over something so stupid. Just picked up my daughter's birthday cake that was supposed to be white, and it's yellowy, cream-colored icing, which clashes so bad. I paid a lot of money for it and for a special mini to put on the top from Etsy, and it's awful. Do I send it back? Try to ice it myself? Some other trick? Pick is not as yellow as it is in real life. Pick in the examples in the comments. So there were a lot of people that are like, oh my God, that's so horrible. Other people were like, let's burn the bakery down. They've ruined the birthday. So this was my response. I photographed over 500 weddings. The day of my own wedding, mind you, I didn't get married till I was 38. I wasn't allowed to blow dry my hair due to an eco-lodge electricity thing. Our wedding planner was in the hospital for anaphylaxis. My mother never finished my dress, so it looked like I was wearing a potato sack. The caterer refused to drive up the hill to deliver the food. The shuttle with all the guests got stuck in the mud. My husband got too high on the local weed and was too scared to walk down the aisle. And the makeup artist painted my eyes and eyelids black. I looked like a Puerto Rican prostitute. Oh, and all of our cupcakes melted. And you know what? I laughed everything off, drank wine, and had the best day of my life. This shit doesn't matter. None of this matters. None of these details matter. What matters is you are a great mom who cares enough to even order a cake. Your daughter, nor anyone at the party, is going to care, I promise. And no one is ever going to remember that cake. They're going to remember how much fun they had celebrating. If you stress out about this, it'll just affect the energy, and that isn't what you want your daughter or you to remember. Rock that yellow cake and wash it down with a cocktail. I never lie. But I don't care because my mom was there getting me ready, and I loved every minute of that day. We had so much fun despite all of the shit that went down. And I forgot to mention also that while I was getting my dress on, our videographer tripped on a tripod and went face first into the cement floor and cracked his head open. Chin. Oh, yes, chin. He cracked his chin open. And he's like, blood spitting out. And I'm like, oh my God, Flan. He's like, get away, get away! The white dress, I don't want to get blood on it. So he just like used masking tape or something and put it together. None of those details matter. No one cares about that. We should be focusing on the present and how it feels. And that's it. Children are not afraid to take risks. And in terms of business, I have been pretty risky. I have failed, but the times that I succeed were because I failed, because things didn't work out, and so I learned how to succeed next time. This is some of the newer work that I'm making. I was really stuck in a rut photographically, and lo and behold, my last mentor that I just worked with said, your work's too perfect. Everything is too perfect. And so now I'm taking a lot more risks with my work, and I'm playing more like a child in the field, and now my photos feel. And that's a really awesome thing for me to experience. They take risks jumping from really high places into the pool. Pretty sure that hurt really bad. They take risks that they might get in trouble or get caught, and they do it anyways. They get stuck and then sometimes need help. And that's something we need to keep in mind, that asking for help doesn't mean you're weak. Admitting that you have failed at something doesn't mean you're not successful. We need people around us in order to survive. It's important. I don't know if you guys know, there's been studies done. I didn't even plan on talking about this. There's been studies done for children in Chinese orphanages where it's been overcrowded, and so they don't get any affection because there's not enough bodies to nurture them all day long, and everything is delayed in their development because of that. We humans need each other, and that means that we're not going to be perfect in front of each other, and we catch each other when we fall, or we ask for help. So, Greg and I decided to take a risk and try and have a baby. And apparently, we are really fertile. We got pregnant the first time we tried, which I was a little upset with the OBGYN because they were like, so you're in your 40s, and so you just should start trying, and it might take a while. Don't get discouraged. And I remember I didn't even realize we got pregnant like on our wedding night, like that cliche. Like we came back from our wedding, and I realized I was late, and I was like, there's no way I'm pregnant. So I took a pregnancy test, and Greg kept pacing back and forth, like, is it there yet? I was like, it's been like 3 seconds that I pissed on it. Just like, wait, it takes like 3 minutes. And I'm like cooking, because I'm like, there's no way I'm pregnant. And then he keeps checking, and he's like, and I was like, it has been like 30 seconds. And he's like, I'm just kidding. And then all of a sudden, he picks it up, and he's like, oh yeah, you're going to need to see that. And I went over and looked at it. And I was like, first time? What? Like, this is not supposed to happen on the first time. And I started freaking out. We're not really ready. I have shoots coming up. Like, I think we have to shoot a wedding in 9 months. Like, it was supposed to take a while. And I miscarried a week later. And I then miscarried 4 more after that. We could always get pregnant. We had no problem getting, like, literally my husband could sneeze in the bathroom, and somehow semen would fly up my shirt, down my pants, and I was pregnant. Literally every time we tried, but we couldn't keep the baby. We had a really hard time keeping the baby, and I was really discouraged, and we'd get a little bit further each time, and then we would lose the baby, and Greg was like, oh, this is the last time. Like, I can't do this again. And so I just kept remembering my kids that I would photograph, my students that I would work with, like the little ones, but they always taking risks, even if it was scary. So I like to live by this motto: if Nicolas Cage can still get work, you can do anything. So we made an appointment to get some extra tests done because what we were trying wasn't working. And I don't get real mad very often. And for some reason, one morning, I woke up and I was super pissed at Greg. And I was like screaming at him for no reason. He's like, "Why are you yelling at me?" I'm like, "I have no fucking idea." And like screaming, and I was like, "I'm out of here." And I just like left. And I took the dog and went to a hotel. I've never done this before in my life. So I get to the hotel, and Greg was like most disappointed I had taken the dog. And I go to take my seatbelt off, and I was like, my nipple feels weird. And I was like, wait a minute. So I like get the dog back in the car. I drive and get 2 different types of pregnancy tests. I had already peed at the house, so it's like trying to get like a drip to come out because I can't wait to find out. And the minute it hits, it turns positive. I was like, that's why I lost my mind and I'm at a hotel right now. So I decide I'm going to send Greg a photo of the 2 positive pregnancy tests. And I patiently waited for his response until I got it. This pregnancy did take, but it was scary the whole time. We had a test go bad very early on, so they had to rush some genetic testing because they thought that there was something fatally wrong with the baby. And I had hyperemesis, so I was literally throwing up 6 to 10 times a day until I was 17 weeks pregnant. I ate nothing but watermelon for 17 weeks. Now I can't stand watermelon. I've barfed in every grocery store parking lot within a 5-mile radius of my house. But this was worth the risk. And my placenta ended up dying prematurely, and I had to have an emergency induction. And that was really scary too, because I was just, the whole time I was pregnant, I was so afraid I was going to lose her. I was so afraid I was going to lose her. I didn't even really enjoy the pregnancy all that much because I was just too afraid. But I tried really hard to have a natural childbirth. I really tried hard. And my husband was there every step of the way. I was in labor for 33 hours. I did 19 hours of hard labor before they discovered that I actually, my daughter was sunny side up. So all that work I did all night long was kind of in vain because it wasn't hitting the right spot and it wasn't opening me up. So the doctor said, "I really think you should get an epidural." And I really didn't want one because I felt like I was failing. Like I was giving up. Like there's all these women that are able to have births without an epidural. I should have been able to do that. But she explained to me that I had at least another 6 hours of hard labor. And if I was too tired at the end to push, because I'd already been in labor for 24 hours straight, that I would end up in a C-section. And so I made the decision to get an epidural. It was a really hard decision for me. But I had my people beside me. So even though I felt like I was failing, in the end, it didn't matter because I ended up with the best gift. And that was to be surrounded by my mother, my husband, the best doula, and midwife I could ask for who were on my side the entire time. I love this quote by Ellen DeGeneres. "When you take risks, you learn that there will be times that you succeed and there'll be times when you fail, and both are equally important, and they really are." This is what I want to encourage you to do. Fuck up. That's my dog, Mingus, and sometimes he's a dick. He literally knows how to put his paw on the opener of the garbage can and lift it up and then pull all the garbage out. So my mom taught me this. Whenever I'm worried about doing something, whenever I'm afraid, I should ask myself, what's the worst thing that could happen? And it's been a great motto for me. Like, what is the absolute worst thing that can happen if I take this risk? But I just started thinking recently, why don't we ask ourselves this? What's the best thing that could happen from the risks that we take? Right? Maybe that should be our mindset. What is the best thing that could happen? This could possibly be one of the worst things that could happen. Hopefully it'll play.
Right after the break, we're going to interview Eric Weihenmayer, who climbed the highest mountain in the world, Mount Everest. But he's gay. He's blind. So we'll hear about that coming up.
Okay, as we head to the break, a look at the six.
That's a pretty big fuck up to make on, like, the evening news. I'm just saying. So whenever you feel bad about something you might have screwed up, just think back to this lady. Take it from my clients, take it from kids. Okay, so this is my friend Tyler, who's an incredible photographer. He asked me to come photograph his family. And this is his son, Zach, who at the time had a really big issue with texture of food. And I knew that early on. They had mentioned it at lunch or something. And so at dinner, they were like, we're going to eat mashed potatoes. Like the most disgusting, gross, vile food that we could feed you. We're going to feed you mashed potatoes. But he knew that he had to try it before he could reject it. Ready? So he tries it. Look at how hopeful his dad is. And no, that's not happening. I'm gagging. And then there's a little bit of disappointment. And he's realized he's failed. But now he doesn't have a problem with texture, right? Because even though he kept failing over and over again, he continued to try. The risk is worth it pretty much 95% of the time. I don't know what the hell happens with fathers in the grocery store. There's a couple of dads out here, if you could explain to me why your kids run rampant when a mom goes in the grocery store, she's like, everybody in, get in your seat, don't touch a thing, and they're in and out, we're in and out, we're not flipping around down here, we're just get in the line, don't touch anything, don't touch your brother, let's just get this done. Dad's like, free for all! Like there are kids climbing up the shelves. There's like containers flying everywhere. Oh wait, no, you have to go back. We have to go back. That was a premature ejaculation on this series of photos. Okay, so Dad's like, I forgot something in aisle 4, so I have to go back and get it. I'm just gonna leave the kids with the cart, and they're like, quick, get out of the cart. And I think they want to get these spoons right here. And then they hear Dad go, I'm coming back. And then they're like, shit, get back in the cart. He never knew, and I didn't tell him either. And he's not the only one, Dad, where I just have like kids running rampant in the grocery store. It cracks me up. Here's the best thing. Children come into this world free of judgments of themselves or others. I see it all the time in photos. They don't judge Dad, and Dad doesn't judge them. Again, it's that idea of they don't really care what other people think of them, and they take everyone as good. I feel like there's a lot of freedom in being a child. And I don't think that just because we're grown up that we necessarily have to lose that. Life, it's fucking hard. Take that in for a minute, folks. Dad has everything. Parenting, family, business, friends, remembering your freaking internet passwords and trying to build IKEA furniture. All of this is really hard. We were just talking about this yesterday, and this just happened in the back where they needed my password to get into YouTube so we could stream this live. And I was like, ah, shit. Okay, let's try this one. Okay, now no capital. No, now lowercase. Wait, there's some numbers in there. Oh wait, maybe let's try this variation where there's an exclamation point, and then maybe no. Okay, let's reverse everything. The worst thing in the world is when when you finally have got the password you remember, you've got it in your mind for whatever site you need to log into, and they're like, you haven't logged in a month. Please pick a new password. And you're like, shit! I cannot think of another variation for this password. My assistants know like 20 different passwords, and they'll write me and be like, what password is it for Facebook? I'm like, fuck, I don't know. Pick number 16. Try that. See if that works. Part of the problem is that we want to try and keep up with everyone, and that's what I'm talking about. Keeping up these appearances that we don't fail, that everything is perfect in our lives. And one of the problems I run into when I'm trying to talk to people about the work that I do, I get this, I would never want you in my home, it's so messy. Everyone's house is messy if they have kids. Oh, my life is so boring. Your life is not boring if you have children. It's exciting, it's beautiful, it's fun. There's all this fear that we're going to be judged by the outside world. Pressure to appear perfect, to avoid failure, is literally killing women. This is the newest research that I'm reading up on. Is heart disease and breast cancer are the top 2 killers of women. They're also linked to stress. There has to be a connection between us feeling like we have to do everything and do everything right without failing. It's literally killing us. I posted, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a second, but I posted on Facebook, I did a poll. I said, can you tell me what failure feels like? And I found it funny that several women answered me privately. They wouldn't even answer me publicly, which is fine. But there's so much shame in what it feels like to fail that they don't even want to put it out there. And so I think we're doing all ourselves a disservice because we're hiding things that if we were open about them, our challenges, that we would realize we're not alone. I did a talk publicly, and I mentioned my miscarriages, and 30,000 people watched. And I cannot tell you how many people publicly made a review of my class saying that they thought it was inappropriate, it was wrong, they were offended that I would ever talk about my miscarriages. And when I was having trouble with my miscarriages, I put it on Facebook. I was like, I don't know what else to do. Is anyone else out there can help me, can give me some advice? And it is because I did that I have my daughter now. Because 20 people wrote me privately, didn't want to write me publicly, that they had all had trouble and they went on baby aspirin and then they ended up with kids, and that's exactly what happened with us. The minute I found out I was pregnant, I went on baby aspirin that 5th time and I stayed pregnant. Parenting is the hardest job, in my opinion. So when you're trying to do that on top of run a business or work for somebody else, trying to be a stay-at-home mom, which I don't even know if I'm built to do, I think that because we're not reminded every day that we are doing a good job, even though we feel like we're just going to screw up our kids, that screws with us. It hurts our mind, our heart. See, dad, grocery store, different dad, different kid, different grocery store. Parenting is hard. So the best thing I can do with my pictures is to remind my parents, you are doing a good job. Parents aren't told very often you're doing a good job. The kids aren't going to tell them that. Giving birth is really hard, no matter how you deliver the baby. It's chaotic. Oops. Multitasking is hard. You have to be a mom, a dad, a friend, an imaginary friend, a nurse, a doctor. More multitasking. I think parents sometimes feel completely underappreciated because I believe that it's the most underappreciated job, that we don't recognize for ourselves how hard we work to be good parents. She is not the only one that feels that way. And I like making photos like this for others too, and show these pictures to remind other parents out there that you are not alone. See, she's not alone. Dad's not alone. That's one of my favorite dad photos I've ever made. But here's the thing for you guys out there. If you do feel like you're underappreciated, if you do feel like all your work goes unnoticed, or that you do feel like you're failing as a parent, I'm here to remind you that you're not. All your kids want to do is be just like you. That's all they want. All they want to do is to be noticed. They want to follow in your footsteps. They want to show you that they love you. Oops, don't pass this photo. This was a really important photo for me that I made. It was early on when I first started doing these. And that's my friend Daniel, who's another incredible photographer. And he was working a lot. He's a pretty famous photographer from Mexico. And he had to be away a lot. And he said, he wrote me when he saw this photo, and he said, I'm paraphrasing, I really don't know how to put into words how your photo has basically changed my whole mindset, because I never knew how much my son loved me until you showed me this picture. Your kids do this when you're not looking. When they like grab your leg, they're smiling from ear to ear because they're having contact with you. So if you feel like it's a little bit of a nuisance or they're trying to bother you, I just want to remind you that this might be the face on them that you can't see. Let's read the definitions of failure. Omission of occurrence or performance. Specifically, a failing to perform a duty or expected action, failure to pay the rent on time. A state of inability to perform a normal function, kidney failure. Compare heart failure. An abrupt cessation of normal functioning, a power failure. Lack of success. A falling short, deficiency, a crop failure. Failure is a noun. It's not an adjective. It isn't who you are. We all fail. And we can only be better if we fail. We can only be smarter if we fail. If you don't believe me, take it from Birdie.
You okay? You went spit out. Do you want it or no?
I'm going to go back. I'm almost done. I don't even know what my time is right now. When I posted that question, what does failure feel like? The answers I got were really overwhelming for me. And the statistic was interesting. 85% of the women that responded described it in a negative way, versus only 22% of men. 22% of men said it feels like progress. It feels like I'm learning something. It feels like I'm getting somewhere. But I'm going to read you some of the responses, and they really were hard for me to digest. Like a huge, heavy, painful, hot stone sitting in the pit of my stomach. Guilt that I spent time away from my family and friends, other tasks to just fail. Embarrassment that I even tried in the first place. Like, who the hell am I to try that? And above all, fear of trying again and trying nothing, or trying anything that I am not guaranteed to be successful at. I will hide from things for a long time before I try again. Failure feels like loss, the loss of something important. It cuts deeply, sometimes taking my breath away, to feelings of heaviness, almost depression and disconnection. It makes my soul ache when I fail to meet my own ideals. Dark, depressed, angry at myself, fussy, and hard to focus on something else for a period of time that depends on how hard I work for that. That didn't work in the end anyways. Anxious, disappointing, embarrassing, but I count failure only when I give up. Failure feels like a void, maybe where success could have been. It feels like depression, maybe, a vacuum in which anger, anxiety, and upset collide. I just got tons and tons of these answers. If I had given up, I wouldn't have my daughter. Even though it was really scary because I'd failed so many times to have a baby, if I had given up, I wouldn't have her now. And now I get to enjoy watching her and her father's relationship develop. It's really strong. He's with her all the time. I was a little bit concerned during this scene. Just a little bit. But she loves it. It's something that they do. We've been doing a series of photos of them playing on the bed. If I had failed, because of my failure, if I was afraid to not try again, my grandmother, my favorite person in the world, wouldn't have met my daughter. And I'm working on a photo essay between comparing life and death. And I noticed that death, when you hit that hill and go downward, it's almost like you re-enter childhood and infancy, right? So I've been comparing and contrasting that, and how when Birdie was born, she was really incapable of doing anything. But when she was born, my grandmother was still doing crossword puzzles and, making her coffee and stealing cookies out of the cookie jar because she was addicted to sweets. But as Birdie grew and my grandmother's health declined, there was a cross where then my daughter was more capable than my grandmother. I wasn't planning on telling the story, but I have to. So I just lost my Momor. She just passed away about 2 weeks ago. After a really, really long illness. And it was really awful to watch because she was a woman, my biggest inspiration. She taught me to never give up on myself. I love this story. She was 18, I think, 19, and her boyfriend at the time dared her. They were having a beauty contest for the regatta races, which are very famous sailing races between Harvard and Yale. And he dared her to enter the contest. She's like, I will, and I'll win. And she did. And they had a huge parade for her and everything. And so Eileen Ford was just starting Ford Modeling Agency and offered my grandmother a modeling contract. And my mom said, nope, I'm going to be a nurse. And she was a working nurse for 60 years, all kinds of nursing. She dedicated her whole life to service. And so to watch her ail, watch her body and her mind fail her, that was the hardest thing I've ever witnessed. But I have to tell you a little funny story. The last 2 days were really tough for my mom and my aunt. They were with her the whole time while she was going. And they kept saying, Mom, it's really okay. You can go now. Go to the Lord. We'll be okay without you. We love you. It's okay. And she is stubborn. She would not give up. And day 2, it was like almost 48 hours, my aunt looks at my mom and she's like, I think I'm going to sing to her. My mom's like, what? And so she opens up her phone and she pulls her favorite music, Take Me Home, Country Roads. She starts singing after the intro, Take Me Home, Country Road. 30 seconds in, my mom died. And my mom looked at her and she goes, Jesus Christ, Ann, your singing just killed our mother. And my mom is not that funny. And I don't know what I believe, but I have to believe, because my grandmother was super funny, that she crossed over and was like, here's a little gift for you. Make this joke so that you're not sad and that this isn't the worst thing that can happen, and she's just moving forward. I hope my aunt doesn't kill me for telling that literally around the world story. Okay. This is my last piece of advice. So I've been teaching on Creative Live. I will read it to you. An online educational forum. And on average, about 30,000 people have watched me live every time. And I get a lot of positive, but a lot of negative. And this was, I was pregnant at the time, and we were in Vegas, and my husband's like, oh my God, Kirsten, you just got a really interesting review on Facebook from Jim Miller. I saw you on Creative Live, and I wouldn't let you anywhere near a child of mine. You say you were a kindergarten teacher with all those tattoos and piercings and obvious suppressed lesbianism? No way! And everything you said came down to me. You read letters praising you that your mom allegedly wrote, and you had friends come on for the purpose of telling you what a wonderful person you are, and you even yourself just kept talking about me nonsense. You really need to get over yourself and get in touch with reality. Just because you had a mom that didn't like you and a stepdad that might have liked you too much, well, get over it. Oh, and learn to use a flash. Dang, your photos on Creative Live were horrible. You can't backlight people in the midday sun and expect to not need to have a light on their faces. Your photos really sucked, and I'm just being real. And for someone who allegedly went to college, you sure don't know how to write. Look at all those errors in your post from March 3rd at 2:22 p.m. Full of errors. Things like that reflect on your business. Tisk. Grab a camera, shoot like a machine gun, and hope that maybe something turns out. There, I just saved everyone from having to watch any of your training. They can just shoot like you. Good evening. Wow. I was laughing so hard, I couldn't even breathe. Because I don't know how else to respond to something like that. And then ting, I get a notification. Somebody has liked the comment. And then someone has replied. It's my husband. I live with a lady and I couldn't agree with you more. The biggest risks I've ever taken, sometimes I fail for some people. But if I try to live my life with a little bit of that little kid still inside me, things like this, I just brush off. So if I can leave you with anything tonight, it's that idea of taking the lessons from the kids that I shared with you and embrace failure, because it's only going to make you better. You're only going to improve from failure. Thank you very much, you guys, for coming out. There is